Hi everyone, it's Lynn from Divine Central, and I am coming to you from my RV for just a few more times. We bought a house in Mission, Texas, and we'll be moving in next month, so I'll have a real office to do this in again. Anyway, this is the second video in a series of maybe a dozen, a little bit more, on reading at fairs and festivals. Now, I wanted to break this down into bite-sized pieces so I didn't have too much in any one video. And when I finished my outline and I went back and looked at it all, I then decided to go look at some of the Business of Tarot books that I had purchased and read through in the beginning when I started. And I was horrified that so many things that they covered, I was not covering in this series. Almost to the point where I thought about scrapping it. But then I realized, wait a minute, they're not covering a lot of the stuff, most of the stuff that I'm going to cover in this series. And I'll tell you what, I'm not going to rewrite their books or try to copy what they did. I think it would be smarter for me just to go ahead with what I'm doing here and give you my favorite 4 to 5 Business of Tarot books at the end of this series. All right, so I want to start this video and the next video on just some, opining over tarot and the professional end of it, and then I'm going to get down into a little bit more organized information on where to go, where to find the festivals, how to outfit things in your booth, etc. Okay, so first I want to ask you this. Are you ready? Are you ready to go pro? I mean, have you really considered the ramifications of that? You need to have time. You need to have the right temperament. You need to have, you need to be personable. You need to be sociable. And you also need to be a good storyteller. Can you do all that? Do you have a penchant for all that? Because as much fun as it looks, the fun is all in that minute that you spend at the fairs and festivals, because the rest of the work around that, it's not so glamorous. The loading, the unloading, the reloading, the unloading again, the follow-up, with the social media and everything you need to do. So that needs to be a good consideration before you decide to move forward. The other thing that I would really advise you to seriously think about is, are you an empath? There are so many introverted souls that are getting into this business. And, I am not. One, obviously, I am very much an extrovert. But it takes all kinds of us to make it interesting, to make it fun. But so many more introverted people tend to be, I don't know, their spiritual side tends to come out more. I think those of us that are extroverted tend to hide ours more, where, out in public, where I think that the introverts tend to wear it more on their sleeve, and I don't mean that as a slight. It's just a different approach, a different personality, right? So I want you to know that when you walk into, let's say, an indoor psychic fair, the ones that I go into, I mean, there is so much spiritual energy in the room. It'll make your toes tingle. And I remember this one time, there is an aura photographer that is in one of my circuits. And one early afternoon at an event, he walked up to me and he said, I have a 17-year-old son that I've been trying to to teach him the business, and he knows everything about it intricately except dealing with the client after the photographic session. And he said, I've watched you with people. I know you're very he said, you're very motivating. I would love it if you would please let me offer you a session for free, and I'd like my son to do the whole session all the way through the consulting of the photograph. And I said, well, sure. I mean, it's a $75 purchase. I would love to have that for free. So I sat for the photo, and at the end, the son was going over the photo with me and explaining the auras and everything. And I said to him, what is all this matter in the background, this white matter in the background? And he said, well, those are orbs. And I looked closer, and sure enough, I could see the circles, but there were so many. And he said, well, this was now, by the way, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon at the end of the show. And he said, well, you've been reading for people all day long. He said, you've been drawing spirits to you all day long. And he said, obviously, they must like you because they're still hanging around. And I looked at this picture and I was amazed. There were 30 or 40 orbs all around behind me. And I've never forgotten that. And I've kept that picture. But I want you to realize that's how much energy will be around you if you end up doing these shows, whether they're indoor or outdoor. Indoor, it's more concentrated, just so you know. So keep that in mind, because it doesn't mean that you can't be a good reader. It just says that, maybe a shop environment, someplace where you can cut yourself off in a room with one-on-one, just might be a better fit for you. So the one thing, and I'm not going to address fear, and I'm not going to address that in detail today, the next video, but a lot of newbies fear clamming up, and you get them to sit down and do a practice read and they draw a blank. They just freeze. And that's what keeps people from getting into the profession. They're afraid they're going to freeze, or at least keeps them from doing fairs and festivals, right? So what happens is, I truly believe it's from not knowing the cards. You have to have an intimate relationship with those cards. You have to know the meanings of these cards inside and out. You should know the basic meanings of the cards, but you should also know your intuitive, meanings of the cards, whatever you have put together for the cards. You should be able to flip every single card over and state, this means this means that, this means this, and know those cards really well, because that's how you're going to keep from freezing. We all get stumped from time to time, and it's just going to be super important that if you know the cards, you have a less likely chance that will happen. Now, there is a lady named Christiana Gaudet, and I absolutely adore her. She is a tarot master. You can find her everywhere, and from YouTube to TikTok to Facebook to everything. Anyway, she did an interview a while back with Tori Hartman, and I was so enamored with what she said. I put it in one of my own videos, a splice of it, in a video called Memorization or Intuition, and you can find that on my channel. But it was her rendition of, do you learn the tarot cards by memorization of the major meanings, or do you throw the little white book away and just use your intuition? Well, she discusses how every single one of us, it comes to a time when we sit down and we stare at those cards, and Spirit has decided not to grace us with their presence at that moment or in that reading. And then where do you go? If you are an intuitive reader and you just draw a blank on all the cards, you're not hearing anything from Spirit, you have to go somewhere. And by knowing the mainstream meanings and definitions and phrases and keywords and what have you, you can pick it up with that. Now, it may not be the best reading you've ever done. Lord knows I've got some of those under my belt, but at least you can carry on with the reading for these people. And I'll tell you, if you're taking their money, you got to give them a reading. You can't just throw your hands up in the air and say, "Oh, I can't do the reading today because I just drew a blank." You can't. You know what? A professional can't do that. So you really do have to learn and know the cards. And the best way to do that is to just practice regularly, because whether you're a professional already or not, we all still practice. We all still have to keep our chops up. I have a group of 4 other ladies, all tarot readers, and the 5 of us get together and do a tarot readers podcast on the 3rd Tuesday of every month. They're on my channel, and we will delve into different meanings and, well, how did you take that reading? We'll do maybe a 3-card reading and have everybody pull cards on a question and see how we all deal with it differently. It's a learning thing, and I have a lot of aspiring tarot readers that sit in on those sessions that probably could be a part of those sessions. We're all interested in improving ourselves, and you have to keep doing that if you want to, if you want to work, professionally. Now, my biggest problem that I had when I first started, and I was trying to get ready for quick readings, in succession, was having enough questions to ask. I never had enough, and so I just pack up the cards and watch TV or something. But what I eventually did was I started gathering questions from articles and discussions on Facebook and YouTube videos, and I would just start gathering questions. And I amassed 600 questions, actually over 600. I put them on a grid, on 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper on grids. I printed them off on photo paper because they were hard, and they were hard and they didn't stick together. And I put them in this little packet and it cut up, and then I could just pull out handfuls of them and do quick draw 3-card readings. I do use that for my practice sessions when people want to practice and get ready for timed readings, and they're very helpful. If you're interested in them, I'm happy to share them with you. Find them on my Etsy page, on my Etsy shop. All right, so aside from that, I want to talk to you about developing a style. And I want to talk to you about something I'm going to introduce to you that you might not have heard of before, at least not in this genre, and that is an elevator pitch. I come from corporate America. An elevator pitch is when you get into an elevator with somebody and somebody asks you what you do or how you do it, and you have a 10 to 15, no more than 30-second window to explain to them what you do in a way that they will understand. Now, people will come to your booth that have never had a reading before, and they're going to ask you questions about it, and you're going to be expected to explain to them what a reading is and what they can expect from you. And basically that's meant to entice them to come on in and pay for that reading. So I like to let people know, hey, I'm not a medium, I'm not a psychic, I'm a tarot card reader. My job is to interpret the cards, the messages within those cards, and help you figure out what messages Spirit's trying to get to you. Because whatever cards we pull for you today, those are the cards you were absolutely meant to have. So let's figure out together what messages are coming through. And then I have other things that I say. I won't go into detail here, but it's important that you know. Now, I consider myself a solutions-oriented, everyday reader. I don't get into a lot of esoterica. I don't get into a lot of heavy spiritual things. You can't do that when you're sitting at affairs and festivals and expect to make any money. You can't sit with somebody for 30 minutes or an hour or whatever and get into anything heavy in that environment, right? So you really do need to be able to cut it short and sweet. For that reason, I try to do everyday readings, things that people will understand. And I try to give them something that they can walk away with. Basically, instead of being a fortune teller, I consider myself someone to help them sort through the options of their complex life and come up with some options that they can walk away with, that they can make decisions on. Now, the more you read, the more your own style will come out. You don't need to teach anyone, or I'm sorry, nobody needs to teach you that style. It's going to come out on its own over time. I would say that my style is derived from dozens of people that I've watched and liked and studied, and it all comes together as my own style, and it will happen the same way for you. So I want to tell you about cards for a minute. These are little things that have just didn't have any place else to go, and I just want to share them with you. I have 55 decks of tarot cards. And that includes a small handful of Oracle and about a half a dozen Lenormand cards that I have, decks. I have one coming that I can hardly wait to get. I'm addicted. I'm out of control, and I admit it, and so c'est la vie, right? But I know people that have, over 150 decks. A lot of are collector decks or whatever. People have amassed them over the years. But I don't know hardly any that don't bring 4 to 5 decks to these psychic fairs, but they only use 1 or 2 decks, the same 1 or 2 decks every time. And I'm going to recommend that if you're going to have to practice and get used to using a deck and get used to timed practices, I am going to strongly suggest that you pick a deck to do that, and maybe have a backup deck in case that one decides not to talk to you one day. It's nice to pull out a different deck. But the more you get to know that deck, those cards, and I would make them pictorial decks instead of Marseille, because this way, I mean, when I pull up the Eight of Cups as an example, and I tell people this is a conscious decision to walk away from something that's no longer working for you. And I say, can you see where she has all of the cups lined up in a row? She's already given it the forethought. She's already walking away. And they go, oh, I get it. And I think I know what that means. And that way you can pull them into the conversation. You can have a partnership, if you will, in this reading and be able to help that sitter way more than if you're just throwing out, esoteric, fortune telling, futuristic things. Okay. So, I like to recommend that you get really, really intimate with one deck, possibly 2, to start, and then if you want to switch things out, then do. But I keep saying I'm going to bring different decks with me, and I just can't bring myself to use them, because when it comes to it, I want something that I really know well, and that Spirit knows if they need to get a message to me to give to the sitter, it knows just what cards to pull for that I will know what Spirit has in mind when I see the cards. Okay, so so much for that. What else did I have on my list here? Okay, so if you ever get to the point where you think you know it all, okay, if you get to the point where you're doing enough fairs and festivals that you don't really need to, any more practice, or you're not making a conscious decision to better and improve your situation. Think about adding another divination technique to your repertoire. My byline is Tarot, Lenormand, and Beyond, and that's on all of my marketing material. So I do craft shows. So when I go into a craft show, they only allow 1 tarot reader, 1 Tupperware distributor, 1 Color Street nail people. And so if I were to go into a craft fair and or apply for one and they already have a tarot reader, they would turn me down. I could just turn around and reapply as a Lenormand reader and be in. I have been to shows where there has been a proliferation of readers that were like $10 and $20 readers. And as a $40, $50 reader, I'm not going to, if there's not enough of us there to balance it, then I'm not going to lower my price down to $20. I'm going to set up my Lenormand marketing material that I carry with me and do Lenormand instead. And I will be different than everybody else in the room. It's just something to consider. You can look at Lenormand. You can look at any cartomancy is fun. I have started looking into, I'm working now with crystal divination. I think that would be a fun thing to add that people don't see every day. So it's just finding something to add to your business. So listen, in the next video, I'd like to share a few tidbits with you about fairs and festivals, things to consider in particular for fairs and especially outdoor fairs, and the difference between indoor and outdoor. After that, I'm going to get into the weeds with all the different places that you can read, whether it's fairs and festivals or the types of shops if you determine you're not a fairs and festival person. So stick with me on that. Take a look at our Tarot Readers podcast and some of the other stuff that I've mentioned. Everything I've talked about today on my videos, I will put down below so you can just click on them. And thank you for listening in. I have quite a bit of more information for you. If what I've done today is interesting, stick around.